Hello everybody. If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 482, The Annoying Little Girl. Intermediate. Steve adjusted his flat cap, a familiar ritual that always preceded a good park visit. Beside him, Bobby, his lively Vizslador, sat panting with joyful anticipation, her amber eyes fixed on the path ahead. At 66, Steve found immense comfort in their daily routine. The park, with its wide open spaces and the gentle murmur of distant traffic, was their sanctuary. Today was a particularly pleasant day. A mild breeze rustled the leaves of the ancient trees, and the sun, a warm balm on his face, promised a relaxing afternoon. They found their usual bench, slightly weathered but sturdy, beneath the shade of a blossoming cherry tree. Bobby immediately flopped down, her tail thumping a steady rhythm against the grass. Steve listened to the music from his phone on his Bluetooth headphones as usual and settled in. The familiar songs a comforting presence. They hadn't been there long when a father and his young daughter approached. The girl, no older than 5, skipped ahead, a brightly coloured blanket dragging behind her like a cape. She had a mischievous glint in her eyes, and Steve chuckled quietly to himself. Children, he thought, were a force of nature. The father, a man in his late 40s with tired but kind eyes, offered Steve a polite nod as he guided his daughter toward the other end of the bench. "Mind if we join you?" the father asked, his voice soft. Steve smiled. "Not at all. Plenty of room." The little girl, who Steve now noticed had fiery red hair tied into bouncing ponytails, plonked herself down between her father and Steve. She immediately spotted Bobby. Her eyes lit up and a wide grin spread across her face. "Doggy!" she exclaimed, her voice surprisingly loud. Bobby, ever the friendly one, lifted her head and gave a tentative wag of her tail. She was always good with children, usually just letting them pet her, but this little girl had other ideas. Slowly, deliberately, she began to wave her blanket. It was a soft, fuzzy thing, probably her comfort blanket. She waved it just out of Bobby's reach, a playful glint in her eye. Bobby, whose instinct was to chase anything that moved, twitched an ear. Her tail began to wag faster, a low whimper escaping her throat. She thought it was a game. "Sienna, darling, don't tease the dog," her father said gently, his attention on his phone for a moment. But Sienna wasn't listening. She giggled, a high-pitched sound that seemed to egg Bobby on. She dangled the blanket closer, then pulled it away just as Bobby stretched her neck. Bobby, now fully engaged, got to her feet, her body quivering with excitement. She took a step towards Sienna, her nose twitching. "Sienna, that's enough," her father said, this time with a little more firmness in his voice. He looked up from his phone, a frown creasing his brow. "Bring the blanket here, please. Bobby thinks it's a toy." Sienna, however, found this new game far too entertaining. She scooted off the bench, the blanket trailing behind her. Bobby, thinking it was an invitation to play, trotted after her, a joyful bark escaping her lips. Sienna ran a few steps, then turned, waving the blanket again. Bobby pulled forward, her leash tightening in Steve's hand. "Sienna, stop!" her father commanded, his voice now sharper. He stood up. "Give me the blanket, now! We don't tease animals." But Sienna, caught up in the thrill of the chase, ignored him. She was laughing loudly, her red ponytails bouncing as she dodged Bobby's playful lunges. Bobby, confused but still enthusiastic, was now pulling quite strongly, her desire for the fuzzy toy overriding her usual calm demeanour. Steve had to brace himself, his arm aching slightly. He looked at Sienna's father, who was now sighing in exasperation. "Sienna, for goodness sake, bring it here. I'll put it in the bag." He gestured to a canvas bag at his feet. Sienna just shook her head, a defiant glint in her eye. "No, it's my toy," she declared, and ran a little further, drawing Bobby with her. Steve sighed. He loved dogs, and he loved children, But this was becoming a bit much. Bobby was getting overexcited, and he didn't want her to accidentally hurt the little girl, even in play. He looked at Sienna's father, who was still trying to coax his daughter back, a weary expression on his face. It was clear Sienna wasn't going to listen. "Come on, Bobby," Steve said, a note of resignation in his voice. He gave a gentle tug on the leash. "Time to go home." Bobby, still focused on the elusive blanket, whined in protest, but Steve was firm. He stood up, pulling Bobby away from the tempting game. Sienna, seeing them leave, finally stopped running, a look of surprise on her face. Steve offered Sienna's father a small, sympathetic nod. "Nice to meet you both," he said, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. As they walked away, Bobby kept looking back, a hopeful glint in her amber eyes, as if expecting the blanket to suddenly appear again. Steve patted her head. "Never mind, girl," he murmured. "We'll find a quieter spot." The gentle hum of the park, once so peaceful, now felt a little less so. They walked home feeling more than a little bit miffed. Vocabulary notes. Ritual, noun. Meaning, a set of actions or procedures performed regularly in a particular order, often with a symbolic meaning or as a routine. Example, Steve adjusted his flat cap, a familiar ritual that always preceded a good park visit. Explanation. For Steve, putting on his cap before going to the park was a routine, almost a tradition that he always followed. Similar words. Routine, e.g., their morning routine involved a walk and then breakfast. Custom, e.g., it's a custom in their family to have Sunday lunch together. Habit, e.g., he had a habit of biting his nails when he was nervous. Ceremony, more formal, e.g., the graduation ceremony was held in the main hall. Sanctuary, noun, meaning a place of refuge or safety, a place where one feels safe and protected. Example, the park with its wide open spaces and the gentle murmur of distant traffic was their sanctuary. Explanation. For Steve and Bobby, the park was a peaceful place where they could escape and feel secure. Similar words. Refuge, e.g., the old lighthouse served as a refuge during the storm. Haven, e.g., the quiet library was a haven for students. Retreat, e.g., she went on a yoga retreat to relax. Shelter, e.g., they built a shelter from the rain. Balm, noun, meaning something that has soothing, healing or comforting effect. Example, the sun, a warm balm on his face, promised a relaxed afternoon. Explanation. The warm sun felt very comforting and pleasant on Steve's face, like a soothing ointment. Similar words. Comfort, e.g., his words were a great comfort to her. Solace, e.g., she found solace in her music after the breakup. Cure, often for an illness, e.g., rest is the best cure for a cold. Relief, e.g., the cool water brought instant relief from the heat. Mischievous, adjective, meaning causing or showing a fondness for causing trouble in a playful way, naughty but often charmingly so. Example, she had a mischievous glint in her eyes and Steve chuckled quietly to himself. Explanation, the little girl's eyes showed a playful, slightly naughty quality, suggesting she enjoyed playing tricks or causing light-hearted trouble. Similar words, naughty, common for children, e.g., the naughty boy wouldn't share his toys. Playful, e.g., the kitten was very playful. Roguish, often for adults, implying charmingly dishonest, e.g., he had a roguish grin. Impish suggests a small, slightly supernatural being, often used for children, e.g., her impish smile made him laugh. Exasperation, noun, meaning a feeling of intense irritation or annoyance. Example, he looked at Sienna's father, who was now sighing in exasperation. Explanation, Sienna's father was very annoyed and frustrated because his daughter was not listening to him. Similar words, frustration, e.g., he felt great frustration when the computer crashed. Annoyance, e.g., her constant complaining caused him annoyance. Irritation, e.g., he tried to hide his irritation at the delay. Vexation, more formal, e.g., the endless paperwork caused him much vexation. Elusive, adjective, meaning difficult to find, catch, or achieve. Example, Steve patted her head. Never mind, girl, he murmured, we'll find a quieter spot. As they walked away, Bobby kept looking back, a hopeful glint in her amber eyes, as if expecting the elusive blanket to suddenly appear again. Explanation, the blanket was elusive because Bobby couldn't catch it. It was always just out of her reach. Similar words, evasive, often used for people avoiding something, e.g., he gave evasive answers to the reporter's questions. Fugitive, a person fleeing from justice, e.g., the police are still searching for the fugitive. Hard to catch, find, simpler, more direct. Slippery can be literal or figurative, e.g., the fish was slippery, or he was a slippery character. Resignation, noun, meaning the acceptance of something undesirable but inevitable. Example, come on, Bobby, Steve said, a note of resignation in his voice. Explanation, Steve spoke with resignation because he had accepted that Sienna wasn't going to stop teasing Bobby, and therefore they had to leave, even though he didn't want to. Similar words, acceptance, e.g., her acceptance of the situation was surprising. Compliance, acting in accordance with a wish or command, e.g., he showed full compliance with the rules. Submission, the act of yielding to a superior force or to the will of another, e.g., he bowed his head in submission. Reluctance, unwillingness often followed by acceptance, e.g., he showed reluctance to go but eventually agreed. Story written by Gemini AI, image created by Grok 3 AI. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you.